Are you seriously going to eat, you fat blibbity blabbity blob? I mean,
It's
some of you might be like,
continual.
why would I want to start this?
Sensitive. She's sensitive.
You are listening to the Tammy Talks Unscripted Healing Podcast, where we share stories that are, you guessed it, unscripted.
That's the thing, this journey doesn't stop.
It doesn't really
right?
end. We have a general sense of the topic each episode, but really the whole point is just to show up and be authentic and let our inner child speak its truth. And I have continued to work through that story of constantly hearing, well, we don't want, got a hot dog on our hands. Yeah, guess what, Mr. Sabatsky, you do. So I'm so excited that you are here, and it is my hope that you hear yourself somewhere in the story so that way you can feel seen and heard as well. So let's start talking. Welcome to the Tammy Talks Unscripted Healing Podcast. I have what feels like a new friend, but also like an old friend, because I feel like we're just old souls who immediately clicked. I knew within like 30 seconds, like, oh, she's my people, and knew that you needed to be on this podcast and sharing your story from just, again, the little bit I knew. It just was like, yep. And so here she is.
You speak to my inner child. You make me feel nourished just being in your presence.
Oh, well, thank you. So I met Laura through Faith. So those of you who know, like, Faith edits the podcast for me. And I got to be a guest on her podcast, Visible Women, last week. And you were kind of behind the scenes doing some of the camera stuff, helping out.
Yeah.
And I was sharing my love for inner child work. And you were kind of back there like, me too. Or
I know. And you guys were like, is there something wrong? Do we need to stop? And I'm like, no, it's just resonating. Sorry.
yeah. So we got done and you were kind of sharing a little bit more about your story. And I was like, girl, we need to get you on here. And again, like, share your story for more people because it's so relatable in so many different ways. And that's the whole point of this podcast, is for people to share stories. So all of you listeners can hear yourselves within the story. And that's the whole point, to let your inner child feel seen and heard and all that jazz.
Especially as women, we spend so much time in our own heads and in our own hearts and feeling isolated and feeling alone.
Yeah.
And what you and I kind of talked about earlier was just the need to feel connected and not feel alone and isolated, even though we're feeling all these things that people don't typically talk about.
Yeah.
It's like shameful to talk about some of this stuff, but like we need to.
Right.
We need to bond and connect and not feel alone, especially as we are not getting younger and we're not surrounded by the same kind of crowds that we used to be. I'm not in the PTO anymore, and I don't have, I'm not going to all the networking that I used to. And it's like, I work all of my jobs home alone.
Yep.
Sometimes I go to the grocery store just so I can talk to people.
Oh, yeah.
It's horrible, but Aldi people are really nice. So it's fine.
Well, I joke, people make fun of me for being at the gym for 3 hours. Like, but it's the only time that sometimes I am around people, and I just need to kind of feel that energy to be around other people. And so sometimes like going to work at a coffee shop is literally just for that, just to get out and and just connect energetically to people. And so when you do find people like you, or you resonate, like, you want to hold on to those people. Like, did we just become best friends? Like,
Oh, absolutely. We're already talking about a support group.
yeah. So if you want to join us for our support group once a month, let us know. So let's kind of dive in, because you said, oh man, inner child stuff. And I was like, girl, I can talk about this all day. So why don't we just put mics in front of us and let's go.
Let's do it.
No, just a little snippet from what you shared that day.
Yeah.
So this is, again, a very unscripted podcast episode.
Already cried details on here. So we figured we should stop talking about this.
Yeah.
And save it for the podcast.
And this is really good stuff. And again, because it resonated so deeply with me too, I was like, nope, we got to say this, because if it resonates for both of us,
Absolutely.
it's going to probably for a lot of the listeners as well. So
Yeah.
so you kind of tap into little Laura and you can share your story.
Yeah. So what I was starting to tell you before is that I'm 49. I have a 21-year-old son who's a college student at UW-Madison. And so I'm dealing with the whole empty nesting thing. And it kind of started during COVID. And it wasn't like he picked up and moved to college and all of a sudden it was like, oh, this is hard. It was like, it was during COVID.
Yeah.
And he started spending more time over at his dad's house because his dad lives in the really gigantic house and he's got tons of space and I'm in an apartment. So who would want to hang out with mom on the couch, So, so I kind of realized all of a sudden, I think like 6 weeks went by where I'm like, Jacob hasn't slept here in like 6 weeks. And like slowly more of his clothes are being gone. And it was kind of one of those things that was like, wow, this is like hard.
Yeah. Ooh.
So he comes over all the time now, which is great. And he's a good cook. I literally, every time he makes a meal, I post it on Instagram. I'm like, Chef Jacob was here.
Oh, I love it.
He's a really, really good cook. And he's such a good kid. Like, he loves his mom. I know mama's boy has a really negative connotation, but like, mine's the epitome of like, he loves and respects his mom, and he really wants to show up and support and be there.
That's awesome.
Even though he's going through all of his own shit.
Yeah, right.
So it's great that then he's a great kid and that he's there. And thankfully he's still in Madison area. So I get, I can see him. Although he's now talking about moving out to Utah to go skiing and do ski patrol after he graduates. And I'm like literally he was telling me last night on the phone, and I started getting heart palpitations. And I was like, wait, leave for who's left?
Yeah.
So that's why we met.
Yeah.
I'll fill in spot. So I'll tell you a little bit about how I don't have a relationship with my parents or my sister anymore.
Yeah.
And that's hard.
It's
hard because now I feel like all I have is my son.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of pressure for him. So I'm going to put on him like, if you're not here, who do I have? But yet that's what I feel like. So it's a hard transition.
Yeah. Very hard transition.
And I was telling you a little bit about like my poor little inner girl. I've always felt like I'm not enough and I'm too much at the same time.
Yep.
Like, I've never been married. And every time a relationship ends, it's like, oh, got rejected again.
Yeah.
Got rejected again. I'm still not good enough for people.
Yeah.
So it's hard.
Yeah.
So I love hearing your perspective about inner child and how working on your inner child can help you be a healthier, happier, more whole adult woman.
Right.
So I'd love to hear more about that from you.
Yeah. And I can relate so much. And for those of you that have been following along and listening this whole time for 30 episodes, you know that is very much a similar story for me, is that not good enough, but always too much, and being the hot dog and all those things. And so
The hot dog. Yeah.
yeah, the hot dog, every intro, you guys hear that, but that was very true. But at the same time, like, why, like, how do those two things go together? Like, I'm too much, but yet not enough. Like, that makes no sense.
Yeah.
But what a little mind fuck that is, for a little girl to grow up
Seriously.
thinking that, and then as an adult trying to unpack that. Like, this doesn't even make sense, and where does this come from? But you're right, you can see it impacting literally every area of your life.
My whole life. It's either I
Whole
talk
life.
too much.
Yep.
I think too much. I feel too much.
Share
I
too
talk
much.
too much. I share too much. But yet now I'm sitting here as a single 49-year-old woman. I'm like,
Yeah.
I feel like epitome of white material. I'm self-supportive. I'm not a nagger. I'm a decent cook. I'm really good at kernels and fudge.
Ooh, yes, you
It's
are.
like I love all these skills and talents, and I'm a warm-hearted person with so much to give. And it's like, why doesn't anybody want it?
Yeah. Well, and I think sometimes when we start to look at where am I blocking myself from love because I've been so hurt in my past,
Right.
that little girl in me or her protective ego was like, if you're not receiving love the way that you need it growing up as a kid, it starts to build these walls around her heart.
100%.
And so now it's like, yes, I want that, but there's still this wall and block where you're not even able to give it and receive it in the way that you deserve.
And you're so afraid of being rejected.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like, I can receive love in the way people want to give it,
But it's,
but nobody can give it in a way that makes me feel wanted and appreciated, validated and respected and whole.
right. Well, and I started to learn, this was one of those lessons, like the hard way, was the more I was seeking that outside of myself, the more I got the lessons like right slapped in my face. I'm like, oh shit, like this has to come from within. Like I have to feel worthy. I have to value myself. I have to love myself. And until I do that, I'm going to get all of these examples from the outside that reflect that back. And I was like, no more.
Yeah.
So like I had to go to work and literally kind of hunker down.
Yeah.
And do a lot of freaking self-love stuff. And I know when people think like self-love, like I'm not talking about freaking bubble baths here.
Or masturbation.
Masturbation. But
It's deeper than that.
it's so much deeper than that. It was like looking at these Band-Aids that I had put on these massive wounds of, oh my gosh. And again, that's why as a dietitian, like I can't just hand people meal plans because I know, like, I want to know why you need one.
Right.
Because I did the same freaking thing for years. Yes. But we use it. Like I used it to numb, but we do these things on the surface that can be Band-Aids and be like this temporary fix or this like superficial love for ourselves. And I realized I was doing all the surface level things. I was taking care of myself nutritionally and I was, going paddleboarding more. I was doing these kinds of things, but like,
But there's still a hole.
right on a deeper level, like an emotional, spiritual level, there were so many times where I was still abandoning myself, not trusting my intuition, still people pleasing, which to me, like that form of abandonment for her is the hardest because I'm trying to people please. And when I do that, she's like, what are you doing? That's not what you wanted to do. That's not who we are. That's not standing in your power. And I'm like, I know, but that's
You saying people please just literally makes me cry.
yeah.
I don't know how to get out of not contributing to a relationship that way.
Yeah. Because that met your needs growing up. If that was how you kept the peace, if that was how you felt seen or loved growing up, that feels like such an automatic response. And so it's like, how do I stop that?
Yeah.
When your ego is like, you can't because that's the only way. But here
My sister was the black sheep of the family.
interesting.
And so I was the good girl.
Oh,
You know, I was a cheerleader. I was a volleyball player. I got good grade. I dated a guy that was good at sports. He was really smart. I didn't even drink in high school. Like I got to school early and went and studied at my locker with the guy I was dating. I mean, it was like,
wow.
I was the good girl. I didn't even have my driver's license. And so I went to parties with my friends and I was the sober one who drove everybody else home without a driver's license.
Wow.
And I was like, if I breaking the rules, if I get pulled over, I'll just be like, look, I'm sober and I'm bringing all my friends home. Like I'm being a good Samaritan here. I was like, I so had myself talked out of a ticket and never did get pulled over. But growing up in Eagle River was a whole different story.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where, and you talk about like the people pleasing, and I got out of, I ended an ended relationship. I'm not the one who chose to end it, but it ended and it was probably good for me in the long run. But I spent 2 years intentionally being single.
Yeah.
And I thought I did all the work. I was happy with who I was. I was happy with my alone time. I love myself. I'm good with being alone. Like I'm really good at it.
Yeah.
And then finally something came up where I'm like, let's just see what's up there. I'm in a good place.
Yeah.
I'm so much more receptive to being in a good place. And I met a guy in May. We dated for 4 months and he just literally broke my heart.
No, sorry.
And it was one of those things where it was like, I matched his energy the whole time and I thought we were in the same place. And I gave the more he gave. And it got to the point where he was like, I just don't think that I'm going to ever get to the place where you are. And I was like, I don't even know what to do with that.
Right.
So it was kind of like, God, I thought I did all this work. And yet hearing him in the same place I was 4 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm like, maybe I just shouldn't date. Maybe love isn't in my journey.
But yet when I want to say to the little girl, like, no, you absolutely are worthy of love. You're absolutely deserving of love. And if he had his own blocks, you don't know that, but yet we internalize that there must be something wrong with me.
Yeah.
When maybe he has his own blocks and doesn't see that in his future.
He had his own blocks.
Right. But so it's,
and I was accepting of all of those things. I thought, I am not going to judge you for all these things that are like little teeny.
Right. We all have our stuff.
I was so like, that's fine that you X, Y, and Z and you this and this. And, I really bonded with his son and, his son was like, is Laura coming over? Can Laura come over? Like even to go fishing. I mean, it was just, I was in such a good place for 4 months. And it was like, fuck. I'm here again. How am I here again? Yeah.
Well, and what I have found throughout this journey is that the healing happens in layers. And just when you think, oh, you've got it figured out, it's like,
yes,
yeah, but we got a little bit more work to do here on this worthiness and self-love. So we're going to like rip this relationship out so you can, it's like right in your face. You can't miss it. Like, oh shit, I still have some work to do on loving me.
But it's like, people talk about like the layers of
100%. That's what it is.
It's like you rip the whole entire thing open all at once. Like the proverbial people biting into an onion. It's like, that's what I feel like whenever I'm like lurked from where I thought I was comfortable.
Yeah.
And then I also had a bunch of financial things that all happened in the same month. And I was like,
yep,
this is a lot.
And that is honestly, that's kind of what the podcast was about last week, where it just felt everything got so heavy. And it's really hard in those moments to go to that place of how is this happening for me? I'm sure some of my faithful listeners already know, like, you're getting the test because you didn't learn the lesson, because I say that every time. And that was something I had recognized, like, why does this keep showing up? Because there's these patterns. And as long as I stay stuck in these old cycles and these old patterns, I'm going to keep getting the test until I have learned this lesson of like unconditional love for myself. And how can I support myself through the really, really, really hard times? Because it's easy to support yourself when you're like feeling good and money's flowing in and you're on a honeymoon period. And Yeah.
But it's one of those things too, where how do you separate? I love myself. I really do.
Yeah.
I know I'm good at a lot of things and I'm good at loving people. I have an amazing friend network. I have to tell you, like, I am blessed to have you join my circle because it is an amazing circle of people like Faith.
Yes.
And like, I am literally blessed. I can guarantee you when I'm in a dark place, I could call any one of my friends and they'd be there, but I don't like to ask for help.
Yeah.
But I love myself, but why am I so hurt when people don't love me back? Yeah. Am I the first person to sit here and bawl?
No, absolutely not. They've seen me cry on here plenty. Actually, last week I did too.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and that is the hard part because it's like,
And it's okay to cry.
It's
okay to cry.
necessary. Yeah, but that's such a great question, right? Because when you think, I too love myself, but and I think that's where sometimes there is this knock, right? And that's where sometimes we can't even find it on our own. Sometimes you need people to be able to reflect back to you, to be able to dig through parts of your story and like, oh my gosh, and help connect some of these dots because sometimes like we have these blinder spots and that's not a fault of our own. To me, that's ego's protection. Like, I'm not ready for you to see this yet. I'm not ready for her to go there yet. And so you might not have all the memories that you need to really get to, why is this still a thing? Why am I still protecting myself so much? And that may be all it is that there's such a fear of getting hurt, even though I know I'm worthy of love. I know I love myself. I know what I bring to the table. But what if they leave? Like just that little bit. So this analogy that I share is, let's say you're going to a restaurant and you get this menu of options and think of it as like from God or the universe, like, what do you want?
Right.
What do you want out of your life? What do you want out of your relationships? And you get to pick anything. And how many of us would look at that and be like, well, I can't get that. I don't deserve that. I'm not worthy of that. But literally there's
the most expensive steak dinner at the restaurant. How often do you willingly choose that and say, you know what, I'm worthy of like the most expensive thing on the menu?
Right.
No, I'm one of those people that I go into it, especially if I'm not paying.
Yep.
Okay, I'll go late. Right. Kind of mid-tier. But then we still have to do gluten-free. So that eliminates a lot of fun things too. But yes, it's I don't feel like I'm worthy of the most expensive thing on the dinner plate.
Yeah. When here, like God of the universe is saying like, no, I'm literally giving you every freaking option. Why are you limiting yourself?
Yeah.
And so if you're finally like, okay, you're right. I'm going to do this. I'm going to pick like the most amazing career. I'm going to pick the most like fairy tale kind of love. And I believe you. I'm worthy. And you do it and you put in the order and the waitress is like, okay, I'm going to take it back to the kitchen.
And how do you want it done?
Right. Yeah. But then all of a sudden you're like, wait. Can you come back? Like all of a sudden you doubt or you worry. Or you have fear. You second guess it. And all of a sudden you're basically calling the waitress back and saying, I'm not actually sure if I want that.
Yeah.
And so eventually you do that how many times? We do that all the time to ourselves.
Yeah.
The second we put it out there, we're already like, yeah, I don't actually know if I'm worthy of that.
Trivia show. Yeah. Your first gut instinct is usually right.
100%. But we get in the way. Ego gets in the way. And that's, if you can follow and know what intuition feels like, you can be like, you know what? No, I'm going with my first instinct. Waitress, go with it. Don't even come back. Even if I wave you down and flag you, don't come back. Put it in. But we don't.
Final answer,
yes. Yeah, oh my gosh, if we could get a buzzer for that. Dang. But we call the waitress back so many times out of fear and guilt and shame and all that stuff. And so pretty soon, the waitress is like, what the hell do you want?
Right.
Put the order in if I don't know what you actually want. Are you going to make up your mind?
Steak's gone.
Right.
So now you can't even have it.
Yeah. So you basically like, how do universe are like, oh, like she won't even receive the freaking gifts I'm trying to give her.
Yeah.
And that's when we have to look back like, whoa, like where are these blocks coming from? Like, why can't I walk in and feel like I'm worthy of that when we all know like all of those things are options for all of us.
Yeah.
Like no one is better or more deserving or worthy. It's like we all are. It's just our own beliefs, our conditioning, and our childhood wounds that tell us that we're not.
Yeah. And I see men go through this too.
Yeah,
but I think it's especially prevalent in women.
Yes.
Because we're always told, the kind of psychological, and it's subtle, but be subservient.
Yes.
Be what people need.
Yep.
Read the room.
Yep.
And men will go in and order the most expensive steak on the menu. Steak and lobster, they don't care.
Yeah.
They're like, whatever, I'll figure it out later if I can't afford it.
Right.
But it's like we're taking 80 million things into the equation to make a decision and driving ourselves crazy doing it. And then by the time the meal comes, we're like, I can't even enjoy it now because now I have an upset stomach. Right. So now I'm worked myself into a tizzy.
Yeah, absolutely. And
how am I going to pay for this? And how am I going to whatever? Do I need to bring leftovers home? And does it have gluten in it? And it's
well, and how many calories? I mean, it's not even, you could take that to so many extremes of,
but it's do I deserve it?
Right. Yep. Am I worthy of it? And then again, you want to bring this all the way down even to like nutrition and diet, like all the shit women have about that. Like we can't even if you allowed yourself to order that amazing meal, how much are we now feeling guilt and shame for eating it because of the calories or how much worrying about
we're
the
gonna have
fat?
to pay for it now for like a week. Right. Figuratively and literally.
Yeah. But
like now I'm going to take myself to the gym and drive and work triple harder now because now I have to work it off.
So when we think about that in terms of just the way that we live our lives, like, what the fuck are we doing? What are we doing this to ourselves? Why can't we just enjoy that amazing steak meal and know that we're worthy of it and not put all that stress and worry? Because I know, and this is like a little side tangent when it comes to the actual food part, and this took me a long time to realize this, but our energy when we're eating a meal, makes so much difference. So I have
1,000%. Oh, and by the way, just to bounce off of the dietitian part, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this too. I had bariatric surgery.
Yeah.
And so that was in May of 2023.
Yeah.
And I was at like 207 pounds. So you can't tell, but I'm like 5'8.5". But I was at 207 pounds, which is like unreal. Like my BMI, I was like into the obese level. And my close friends were like, "You don't look like you're that heavy. You don't look like you need surgery. Are you really sure? Like you tried dieting?" Yeah, fuck you. I tried a lot of things.
No, I haven't tried that.
I think it was my metabolism, the whole perimenopause. Like, who knows? It could be 80 million things, hormones, whatever. But like, I had already cut out drinking. I hardly ever went out to eat. I was very careful with eating fruits and vegetables. And my son, who's like a Nazi about food, was like, eliminate seed oils and doing all these other different things. And he was like very helpful with like guiding me. And I was still gaining weight. Yeah. So I went and had the bariatric surgery, lost 55 pounds, learned a lot about like macros and my relationship with food.
Yeah.
And now I'm maintaining a healthy like 152 for the last, I don't know, year.
Yeah.
So it's like one of those things where it was like that layers into it too. Like you're talking about
absolutely
feeling like food already isn't good enough for you, but then you have a weird relationship with food after you've had any kind of like surgery or procedure, or you've got eating disorders. I mean, all of that is just, and it plays with our heads a lot.
Yeah. Well, and I'm glad you brought that up because I mean, I certainly learned to use food at a very young age to numb, to punish myself and all of those things. But also when you are doing everything like quote unquote right on paper and nothing is making sense and nothing is working, like that to me now, I look at it from an energy perspective, from a stored trauma perspective, because we have no idea how much, I mean, we all know like when things feel heavy,
right?
Like it literally feels like it weighs you down, but it absolutely impacts your physical body.
And it's not coming from nowhere.
No,
like you don't feel that heavy feeling because you're having a bad day.
Right.
You feel that because of traumas that are building up in you that are trying to let themselves out and you're fighting them.
Yeah. It's all these emotions, just, I mean, even from everyday stuff. But again, when you think back to as a kid, when you didn't feel safe to express your emotions, like you're carrying around stuff from that far away. And so it's interesting when I think about the changes in my physical appearance and in my health over these last few years, because I have unpacked so much.
Yeah.
Like, how is it that I'm getting older, but yet managing my weight and feeling healthy has actually gotten easier? Like that does not make sense.
Yeah.
But it's because like I have done so much of the work to unpack the like deeper level shit that like I'm not carrying that around anymore. But man, that was a huge part of my story.
And I really would love to work with you more on that too, because ever since you were on that episode with Faith, I started thinking about all the traumas, and it's a really loaded word.
It
right?
is
About the traumas when you went through as a kid, but I don't remember big chunks of my childhood.
Same.
And I just thought, and my sister gives me shit all the time. She'd be like, "How do you not remember that?" I'm like, "I don't know. How do you remember it?"
Yeah.
But like, it's even little things. Like I remember going to a dentist and he would give me like gas to like knock me out. And there was no, I don't know if this is normal, but like I grew up in Eagle River, so small town, right?
Yeah.
And he would like knock me out and do like a dental cleaning. And I think back and then I'm like, was that sexual assault?
Interesting.
Like, how was it? And my mom wouldn't stick around. It was just me and this like, dude. And all I remember is she had blonde hair and I always felt creepy afterwards. And I know, you don't put the feeling on it. You don't know why, but like, there's so many things about my childhood that like just make me feel creepy. Like my mom worked at a paper mill for a really long time. And so we had a lot of babysitters overnight because she worked third shift.
Yeah.
And I remember one babysitter would take her shirt off and she would make us like comb her back with like a hairbrush. I mean, those creepy things that when I start really unpacking stuff, I'm like, there's just a really weird, creepy shit that happened to me as a kid. And like, I mean, even like, oh my God, I remember our grandparents came up, my grandma came up to babysit us when my parents went out of town. And my sister's boyfriend at the time, maybe we were probably like in middle school, right? And my sister's boyfriend like called and said something, and my grandma got freaked out, packed up my sister and went back to Stratford and left me at Eagle River by myself.
Oh boy.
I mean, just there's so much little trauma stuff that happened as a kid that like I just internalized.
Yeah.
And I think that all these different things of being abandoned keep coming up because of all the things I'm starting to remember from my childhood that I just kind of blocked out. Was like, my childhood was normal.
Right. And I've said that a million times on here is, a lot of us feel like I had a pretty good childhood. I had a pretty normal childhood. When you really look at, it's not about like classifying it based on how big your traumas were. It's sometimes these little traumas that's like complex, like PTSD. Like it's this chronic, like triggers, chronic stress, like emotional neglect, abandonment in that, like those little moments. And so I remember this was last year during school, and my daughter and I used to pick her up on Fridays, but they had early release that day. And so she thought I was picking her up, but I thought, oh, it's early release. So she's riding. So we just like miscommunicated, right?
Yeah.
So all of a sudden I get a call like, oh, and I immediately freak out because I'm like, oh, an abandonment wound.
Right.
And then what I realized is like, no, you didn't. And actually, she still talks about it was like the best day of her life because she got like a soda and some candy.
Right.
You know, and the teachers were great.
Serendipity.
But it's about the emotional support you have around those moments. And so to be like just all of a sudden up and left by everybody and you're like confused and don't know how to handle it and you're feeling lonely, but you don't have anyone to talk to. Like that's when we start to internalize this. Like, why did everyone leave me? What's wrong with me? I'm not good enough. Or like ego will take one little moment and turn it into a whole story. And that's why I'm really careful. Like my kids know is like, if I'm short with them or something, like I will immediately, well, not always say immediately, like we'll have our time.
Yeah.
But I will come back around, make sure that they are not creating a story about what just happened.
You know, providing that nurturing that we didn't get.
Yes, because otherwise I know, I was actually just having a conversation with my own mom this last week. And I had said, like, I know this wasn't how it was, but my ego told me this story for most of my life.
Right.
I know now that was not reality, but that was what my ego told me. And I created a whole freaking identity around it.
Well, funny you say that. That reminds me that, okay, so my mom was a single mother. So she married an alcoholic.
Yeah.
Had my sister when she was, literally got married and when she was 18 and left the house because my grandfather was sexually abusive to the women in the house. Oh. And she's the middle of 7 kids. And her maiden name is Link. So, and she was the middle. So she was the missing link.
Oof.
So, so she married the first thing that came around probably to get out of the house.
Yeah.
And he was also sexually abusive. I've heard stories. I think 1 or 2 times my mom mentioned that I'm only on this earth because he raped her.
Oh,
so
wow.
She came home from work and found my sister and I home alone with the front door wide open. I was apparently in a crib, I think, and my sister was in a high chair, falling asleep, and he was at the bar drunk.
Oh my goodness.
So he died of alcoholic dementia, by the way. So, how much do you have to drink that it eats holes in your brain? Like, and he was only like 60 something when he died, I think. So
wow.
Also things right there. But like, so she was a single mom for the first year that I was alive. And then when I was about a year old, she met him, my stepdad, sorry. She met my stepdad when I was like a year old and he's been around my whole life. But they got married when I was in 3rd grade.
Yeah.
And my sister and I still talk to this day. Well, not to this day, but we talked about how it really feels like when she married him, she didn't want to be a mom anymore. She wanted to be a wife.
Yeah.
Oh, so my sister and I felt like we lost a mom.
Yeah.
Instead of gaining a dad.
Right.
Dad. He was around and he was there.
Yeah.
But it was one of those things where it was like, we never felt supported. We never felt listened. My mom's always like, why are you still huggy all the time? Where do you get this from?
Oh, like as a kid,
We
like you
didn't
want that.
feelings.
You crave that. Yes.
I had the mom like, you're in school all day, every day, and then you want to see them on the weekends. And my mom would get up at like freaking 5 a.m. and go off to her coffee clutch or whatever you call it and leave us the list of chores to do in the morning. Or she'd wake us up to the 1812 overture and then she would take off and go hang out with her friends or do whatever, get her alone time. And it was like, oh, so here we are, home alone. Expected to do all these chores. And then like, I don't know. And I don't remember ever feeling like the love that I ever, like most kids get. And people talk about like their parents. And I'm like, it literally kind of rips my heart inside. I'm like, I'm so jealous of like in a good way. Like,
I'm so happy for you.
people-
And it makes me really sad that I didn't have that same thing. And
and like, that has totally shaped who I am as a mother.
yeah.
I spent my whole entire motherhood as a single mother, being the kind of mom that I never had. And it was like relearning all these damaging patterns that were like, I needed to be there for my son, but not overly be there for my son. And
because you're right, we can go take that too far.
yeah,
Go to the other
totally.
extreme.
It was like, but this is my job.
Yeah.
Being a mom is not something extra that you're just thrown at and they're just like little beings running around the house. Like my job when I decided to be a mother was I'm going to nurture this kid to be happy, healthy, whole, responsible, fiscally responsible, respect women, like be supportive, understand what empathy is. And like, I'm like, he's going to be that by the time he turned 18. That worked against me.
Yeah.
My son turned 18 and he doesn't even need me anymore.
Right. I
He
know.
does. But like, he's such a wonderful kid. We've got like his shit figured out already. And it was like, wow.
Because you gave him that emotion. That's the difference too. And I think I can even look at my own life. Like, am I where I want to be at this point? Like, how are there, people that have these stable careers and they're reaching their goals and all of these things? It's like, if you didn't have that kind of foundation to build upon, like if you were in survival mode as a kid when everyone else was developing those kinds of skills, it does feel like you're behind in a sense.
Shown up for your actual volleyball games.
I did have that. My parents were fantastic at that.
Would show up to a volleyball game to get the rose and then she'd take off.
And this is what's helpful going through this kind of process and doing this kind of work, because again, your ego could tell you that there was something wrong with you and that she didn't love you enough, when really this was a woman who obviously had her own trauma, her own wounds, and was so blocked and so young to not have like lived her life to know who she was.
Not at all.
And ego becomes like very selfish in a sense. And so
what's hard too is I feel guilty for judging her.
Right.
But yet that was my mother.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's not even that we can even look at that. Like, I'm not necessarily judging, and I can understanding for her story.
Feeling bitter. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and that's part of your process, right? Is you have to go through those stages of anger and all of those things. And at some point, maybe you get to understanding and compassion and forgiveness. I mean, maybe that's a goal because that frees you, right?
Right.
But when you can look at, I understand now why she was the way she was and how she wasn't able to support me, and I deserved better. And that's kind of what your inner child needs, because you don't want to like dismiss it. And like your inner child still needs to know. And like we talked about earlier, was grieving the loss of the childhood that you didn't have, the nurturing that you didn't get. Like, we don't sometimes let ourselves do that, because feeling sadness that might not have felt safe growing up, that you might not have felt supported being sad or mad or any of those things. And so we suppress those emotions. So now that's why I'm like, I love that you're crying. Like, that little girl needs to cry and let that out. If we can just feel that for her and be like, you're right, that really sucked. And that was really hard. Like, you deserved those hugs. You deserved someone to be like, how was school today? Like,
and I still deserve it now.
And I still deserve it now.
And that's what's hard too, is like, my son loves me unconditionally. And it was like, it's the relationship with child that I didn't have when I was a child. And thank God he has that. He doesn't have to like work through that kind of trauma as a 21-year-old adult now, at least. Thank God he doesn't have to deal with that. But you're right that it's valid that I'm still hurting. And it's because I haven't done the work and I don't know how to do the work to piece and make that little girl feel better. And even though she's now a 49-year-old woman, she's still allowed to hurt. And and that still impacts my relationships now.
Right. And I think that's what, this last relationship was trying to tell you. It's like, hey, I'm still in here and I'm still hurting and I need you to come in. And really what it is,
and he probably did me a favor.
I mean, honestly, that's how do you start to look at those things and like, I can be grateful for that person who just showed me where I still need to heal. They showed me that there's still a wound here that I need to heal. Right. And so, I actually, when those things happen, people trigger me or I do get hurt. I'm like, oh, like what was in this for me? Well, what am I supposed to learn from this? And then I can like bless and release that person, because they are in a way giving you a gift. Like, I'm trying to show you how to heal. And sometimes people get really shitty soul contracts and they do some really awful things, but it's like, hey, that was their role in my life, was to do that. So then I could use that lesson. But if we don't ever use those things as opportunities and lessons, because your ego is like, that person's an a-hole. And we just blame and shame and deflect.
The thing too is I'm grateful that I don't have bitter feelings towards the individual men that have ended relationships with me. It's more just like, why am I not good enough that I can't sustain a relationship?
Yeah. And I think
but I'm just not what that person needs, or they can't recognize what they need, and that's their own stuff. But that's the thing is I'm not even bitter towards the men themselves. It's more the situation and my response towards it. Like, I don't feel sad that this ended.
Right.
And the second it happened and it was crying, and he'd be like, I feel really bad. And I'm like, don't. It's me.
Yeah. And that's where you can look at, like, what is that little girl?
Don't cry. Just get mad at me and yell at me. I'm like, that's not my style.
Isn't that
Sorry.
interesting for him? That's easier because crying would make him feel uncomfortable. We're showing him his own stuff.
Yep.
Oh man, God, everyone has freaking stuff. Well, if you're not willing to have these conversations with your partner and be able to talk about how you trigger one another, when you said this, maybe this isn't how you meant it, but this is how it made me feel, or this triggered me.
How it was received.
Yeah, this is how it was received. And you just take that ownership. Like, I'm willing to look at why this triggered me. But why did you also respond that way? Like, it's a two-way street. And if there's only one person driving, like, you're right. But if you have two people that are willing to actually look at their stuff and reflect on it and heal, like, but no one's coming in picture perfect. And if you are, like, how?
I think I'm a person who tends to like, I want to give you all of my love.
Yeah.
Let's hurry up and get to the place where I can give you all of my love.
Yeah.
And I think some people are like, they kind of need to feel a little bit, and they need to go back and forth, and they need to like fuck up or whatever to be like, nah.
Yeah.
And I think that's a hard thing too, is people are never on the exact same page.
Right.
And they're never at the exact same speed. And how do you navigate that when you're in a new relationship?
Right. Absolutely. And I think sometimes it could just be having this conversation of like, I'm the kind of person that like, I'm all in, I'm invested, and
Same.
And so even just having that conversation rather than like having the expectations. And on one of the podcasts I did with my friend Jen, we kind of talked about expectations. Is we think like, well, I'm all in and I'm all excited. Like, why isn't this person like, well, you're right. They're coming in with their own set of wounds. They're coming in with their own fears. They're coming in. So I have to make sure that I'm not creating a story based off of their stuff.
Yeah.
And so just having these open conversations, because there's nothing shameful about what you're coming in with. Let's just open it up and talk about it.
Yep.
But when you keep getting these tests and the way that you talk about your son, and I recognize this with my kids too, is I was doing all of these things for them and I was giving them this safe space to share their emotions and all this stuff. I'm like, was I doing that for myself? And that's what I see so often, is that many people parent in the way that they wish they would have been parented, but yet they're kind of forgetting about themselves. And so there's one woman in particular, I love her dearly. She takes care of a niece and nephew that have autism, and she is heavy. It's very heavy. And this woman, she is a saint. And if you're listening, I love you. It just gives me goosebumps just thinking about her. And she does so much for these kids, like the schedules, she anticipates 40 steps ahead for what they need, because, they need predictability, they need structure,
stability, routine.
Yes. And she's so good at it. And those kids, oh my gosh, like they're so lucky.
And they thrive.
And they thrive because of it. Yes. But if she's not willing to do that for herself, I said, you have to think of it. There's 3 kids in that room.
Absolutely.
You have to plan for your inner child, yourself, too, because your inner child is like, what the hell? Why?
Yeah.
We haven't even eaten yet today, and it's 3:00, but yet they've had breakfast, snack, lunch, snack, and we're sitting over here like you completely neglected me.
Right.
And like, I remember having that conversation with her. I'm like, start planning for 3 of you. What do you need? How can you build that structure and take care of yourself that way? Anticipate your needs.
You have to add your own needs to the agenda.
Yes.
I literally have now started to build into, because I've got digital planners because I have multiple jobs and multiple emails, and I paid for a service to combine them all into one. But I still write out every Sunday night. I write out my whole entire week in a paper planner because I just like it better that way. And I draw little check boxes on it and everything. And I literally started putting in there like walk, nap, catch up on a podcast or whatever. Because if I don't do that, I don't do it. Like I have to build in some downtime into my day. And I learned I need to block it off in my digital calendar so nobody else schedules over that.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
people will say, like, hey, is it okay to do that? I'm like, I'll just slide that over an hour or whatever. But it's one of those things where, we don't think about our internal need as much as we do our external needs.
Yes. And I think that when you are so far on your journey, like, I've done so much work, like, what the hell? And that's what it's calling us to do. It's like, you can't forget about this part. Like, this is great. You've done a lot of stuff on the outside and taking better care of yourself, but now it's time to go deeper.
That's the other thing too, is like this relationship that just ended that threw me into a really dark place for about a month. It's like, it doesn't mean I did anything wrong.
Right.
And it doesn't mean there's something wrong with me. It just means I was not a good fit for him.
Yeah.
And that's fine. But like, it's still, it can still hurt. And I can still acknowledge that it hurts. And I can still grieve the end of what I thought was a great relationship.
Yeah.
You know, and maybe he was giving out signals he didn't mean to, because I thought it was matching energy pretty well.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's like, it's not a reflection of who I am as a person.
Yes.
And that's what's hard to remember when you're in the thick of feeling like shit.
Yeah.
If that doesn't mean we're shitty people, it just means that things weren't a good fit.
Right.
And that's fine.
Yeah. If not this, then something better.
And if you don't close the door, you can't open a new one. But one of the analogies and stupid cliches.
But it's so
true though.
It's true. And it's absolutely true. And yeah, and really, in a sense, and I say this a million times on the podcast too, like the gift in the painful package was to show you that maybe there's a little bit more self-love that she needs. Because again, like, you've done so many things to show up for yourself and take care of yourself, but there's obviously a little girl still hurting in there. And we need to get to why, like, what does she still need to feel? And maybe it is kind of going through your story and being able to look at some of those situations and like, how do I maybe need to go back to her in those moments and give her what she needed? You know, when I think back to when they left me there, like, if I could go back to her and just see myself like going in there and grabbing her, giving her a hug and being like, whatever you need to say to her in that moment, like sometimes just revisiting those moments, like, what would I have done for her? Like, if I were her mother in those situations. And then oftentimes she feels seen and validated in that experience to be able to then let it go.
Yeah.
They don't want to stay in those painful situations. They just need you to like revisit it, feel it with them, move through it.
But it's also hard thinking about the fact that this is, talk about analogies, compounded.
Yeah.
Like, theoretically, if this was from when I was like 8 to 18, that seems like a good range, because I moved out when I was 17, I should say. Well, let's say 8 to 17 then.
Yeah.
But the damage that was done then builds scar tissue around it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now you're looking, that's 40 years later.
Yeah.
That I'm going back and seeing like, that still hurt.
Yeah.
But maybe there's still glass inside. Maybe there's still, you keep picking at the scar tissue, and scar tissue hurts. And I've had tattoos over scar tissue. I can tell you it absolutely hurts.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where I think that that's what a lot of people don't realize. They're like, you're 40 years old. It was 40 years ago. Get over it.
No.
And it's like, okay, but the root pain in your heart cannot just go away. No. People numb it with drugs, alcohol, sex abuse, sex addictions, gambling addictions, whatever. People find lots of ways to numb it that I have not chosen to do.
Yeah.
So instead, I just feel the hurt, and I don't try to drown it out. But like sometimes I get a little lost in how much it hurts.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's 40 years worth of compounding damage, and it's just because you had a little wound as a child, or you had accumulating wounds, and now here's your inside of your heart, and you've got this.
Yep.
You built up all that scar tissue. It can't just go away and dissolve.
Right. Well, and that's what I find sometimes is what might have been this one little thing. Again, going back to this stupid hot dog story, like that one moment, Mr. whatever his name was, Zamaski, Mr. Zamaski. If you ever listen to this, I'm sorry. I have forgiven you.
Any teacher's names before high school, by the way.
Right?
That's maybe a childhood thing too.
Could be. But it was like, so your ego will search for ways to validate that, you're too much. And I got that message so many more times. At the same time, getting the, you're too much, but you're also not worthy.
Yeah.
So it's like ego goes out to search for ways to validate those stories in relationships and all the things. But really, on a different level, it's asking us, it's giving us an opportunity every time those things happen to be able to see, there is a common denominator here. And this was a wound that I need to heal. But it might have started with one little comment that just started to grow and grow and grow as those messages, came in high school and in college. And then now I'm in my career and, all these other things.
Seeing.
Right.
That's the thing that's interesting about it too, is I bet you could tell that story to 80 million people who knew you back then and nobody would know what you're talking about. But like, kind of similar to that, when I was a freshman in high school, I tried out for cheerleading. Didn't make it. I'm from a really small town. Like, you have to be pretty bad in mobile. So I didn't make it. I was also taller. I think most of my life I've been on the taller end, super flat chested, right? So picture that.
Yeah.
Sophomore year tried out, also didn't make it. And I was like, well, I don't understand. Like,
Right.
I'm not so bad. Like, all of a sudden, junior year, got these ridiculously huge boobs out of nowhere. I mean, I went from like, didn't eat a bra to like C cup out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Suddenly I made the cheerleading team.
Interesting.
And people used to, I remember this one kid, talk about like one person's comment sticks out in your head. This one kid said to me, you're so flat chested, you're like the Grand Canyon.
Oh, wow. Thank you for that.
Yeah. And it's like, I still have so much like, why do I remember? Because, and that's those core memories. I really have these, like, I got these beautiful boobs now, and people comment on my boobs all the time. They're like, yeah, you really do have nice boobs. I'm like, thank you, I know. And I swear to God, half the time people say that, I'm like, Grand Canyon.
Oh, that's,
it's just like your hot dog thing where it was like, and I bet if I asked the guy now, do you remember saying that? He'd be like,
no idea.
no.
Right. And that's
I
where
said that or whatever. And it's like, oh no, I remember you saying it. Like, it's literally, I can hear you saying it in my head.
yes.
And so many comments like that accumulate from our childhood about things that we internalized. And they come out in like the weirdest times in the most uncomfortable places. They make us feel uncomfortable, but we don't know what to do with them.
Right. Well, and what's interesting is because you can like appreciate and like your boobs now, but again, your ego still remembers. Like your body remembers, your ego remembers. And so there's still that little like kind of poke at you. But yeah, remember the Grand Canyon? All of a sudden you feel like, well, I must not be good enough. And then you will create this whole story around it. So even now when
I'm good enough to be a cheerleader when I have boobs.
Right.
I'm not good enough when I don't have boobs.
So how, then it completely distorts your body image and what makes you good enough.
On me for sure.
Yeah.
And it was tall.
Right.
And, they're not going to turn around and order special uniforms for people. So mine literally just barely covered up my ass. And I was a hockey cheerleader.
Yeah.
So we'd have to stand out in the blue line and do like this little thing, or whatever we did. I can't remember exactly what we did. But like, and the opposing team was behind us. And literally I just knew they're all sitting there staring at our asses.
Right.
And I was like, and it was so short. I mean, it was literally just, we had the spankies on or whatever too, but it was like, still, oh my God. And I just remember standing there, like my leg trembling the whole time. I'd have to like stop and like put my leg back and like then put it back out again. Because we're out on skates in the middle of the ice,
Right.
Doing the national anthem, of which you have to be respectful and just stand it. But the whole time I'm sitting there and thinking about the people staring at our asses.
Well, and again, that makes me wonder.
The guys staring at our asses.
Right.
The women weren't allowed to play hockey back then.
Yeah. But it makes, going back to some of the other stuff you talked about like with sexual abuse and all of those things and just being like, what's the word I'm looking for? Not like victimized, but like
usable.
Maybe like something like that where you just, it was right there. I lost it again.
It'll hit you tonight.
Yeah, I will for sure later. But all of a sudden it's like if that were to happen and maybe you don't even remember, like all of a sudden your body doesn't feel like yours. It's like, oh, my body is, supposed to be looked at. It's supposed to be like
objectified.
That's the word. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, yes.
Winning.
Yes. And so sometimes you don't even understand, like, where does it come from? And I was even thinking about, like, where does, my body dysmorphia come from? And like all the issues I had with my body and feeling comfortable in my body. We did a whole episode on, like sexual shame, like why am I hiding my tampon and all of these things? And so like, there's just so many questions that you don't have. And that's where sometimes when you're doing this work, you may not ever get all of those answers, but it's like, how can I make sure that I respect myself and my body and my boundaries but also go back to that girl who wasn't developed yet and tell her like, you were so beautiful then, you were worthy of being on the team. Like, it did not matter what size, like sometimes they just need to hear that.
Yeah.
To just really feel that. And then you can be like, but she also needs to feel that she was worthy even then.
Well, and I also, talking about objectified, I was engaged to a guy in college who was addicted to pornography.
Yeah.
And it's not like you meet somebody and they're like, nice to meet you. By the way, I'm addicted to pornography. No, that's okay.
Right.
It's like, it's a thing you could slowly get exposed to and they slowly tell you a little bit more. And then so I was living with him.
Yeah.
I had an exam like the next day. So I was up studying and I can't remember exactly what brought on the conversation, but one of the girls that I worked with at Urban Outfitters at the time was in the Playboy issue for like Girls of Madison or whatever. And I knew that he subscribed to Playboy magazine, or, people in his household did or whatever. And I was like, I just remember feeling really uncomfortable that then he would be looking at that, and that was a friend of mine.
Yeah. Oh,
and I was like,
yeah.
just, can you not look at it? I'm like, is that even a thing that I can ask?
Right.
And so that was a whole uncomfortable thing. And that was actually before we moved together. And he tried reassuring me, like, you're fine or whatever. And I woke up we had this huge breakdown fight about something to do with porn. And I was like, it's either the porn or me. Like, I feel like shit about it. It makes me feel like shit as a person. It makes me feel like I'm not good enough, that you need to go supplement and look at this and do whatever you do to it or whatever. I don't understand that. And it makes me feel like shit. So I'm trying to establish my boundaries.
Yeah.
And he said, well, of course I would choose you. Of course I would choose you over that or whatever. Woke up at 3 a.m. He was on the computer looking at porn.
Oh.
And like, I know guys that I date now are like, you mean you have a no porn rule? Like, I don't understand that. And like, they make me, and like, okay, I just know that that's a boundary that I have.
Yeah.
And so it's hard enough to date as it is, right? As women our age, because dating in our 40s is like the least damaged thing in the first show. And it's like, then have all these boundaries that you're like, if you look at porn and you enjoy it, then I'm not for you, because I have a problem with it and it makes me uncomfortable, and that's my boundary.
Right.
Feel free to show your own boundaries. And if I don't meet them, that's fine too. But that's just a boundary that I have. And I've lost a lot of relationships from it that weren't meant to be. And that's fine.
Well, in that guy's situation too, like, who knows what his story was and why that
may have gotten arrested for third-degree sexual assault right after that. Yeah, that's another story though.
Right. But like, it makes me think of like his inner child and like, what did he experience as a kid we don't know people's stories. And so much of that, again, goes back to childhood stuff of like, what happened to him? Like, I want to know his story, that for some reason his ego found an outlet or felt like that was okay, or that was a way for him to escape, or that was a healthy way, to be sexualized or whatever. It's just, it makes me immediately think to his inner child, like, what did that little boy experience that?
And what is he? I mean, I think he's my age. I mean, ish. I mean, a year or two or whatever. But so now he's a 49-year-old man, and like, what is his life now?
Right.
I mean, if you find a partner that's okay with that and you don't have a problem with it, and like, that's a healthy part of their relationship, then fine.
Yeah.
But like, when you're with someone and you're engaged to someone who's got that as a boundary and you violate that, like,
right. And that's again where ego is like so selfish, right? Ego is so selfish. Like, him inside probably did want actual intimacy and actually did want to connect with you, but his ego was like,
I mean, I can understand somebody saying like, I need to have a sexual outlet. So if I can't get it from our healthy relationship, maybe I need to seek it elsewhere. But that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
And so it's the dynamics of a healthy relationship are so complicated.
Yeah.
I'm still to this day, I'm kind of impressed that anybody gets it right.
Right. Yeah. Especially like when we're all going through it. But I think the more open we are about our stuff,
right,
you can actually heal together.
Yeah.
It's when you're trying to hide it, when there's shame and there's guilt and there's secrets, because ego doesn't want to fess up to any of that stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I have certainly done things that my ego has done, and now I can see it as that. So I can actually talk about it now. But if I see it as me doing that, it's really hard to like admit.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I can totally understand why my ego did that and didn't want to have the conversation with you, and that got us here.
Right.
And I'm sorry. If I could have kept hold of the driver's seat,
right,
I would have been able to come to you and say, this is what's happening, or this is how I'm feeling, or whatever. But ego was like, yeah, I don't want to do that. That's uncomfortable. So we're going to go around here, and just makes everything freaking worse.
Right. Right.
And so if we can start to see it, I always tell you, like, just almost like see ego outside of yourself. And when you can see it, you can start to see all the things it's doing. Like, oh my God, you are destroying my relationships. You're sabotaging me at work. You are ruining my relationship with my kids and and he was like, but I'm trying to protect little you from feeling any hurt. But you're hurting her because she's locked in this basement and doesn't get to feel joy and love. Like, you blocked her off so much.
Right.
That you're not even allowing her to feel loved.
And there's a hard balance between being selfish and selflessness.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a hard battle too, because like I also dated somebody for a year that was a really high functioning alcoholic.
Yeah.
And I didn't know anything about, I mean, obviously with my dad, I was like, I'm never going to be a heavy drinker because I already know it's like in my genes or whatever. But it was like, it was interesting. And I also worked with him at the time too. So it was like, it was interesting watching him go to work every day, and people will comment, they're like, yeah, Rob's hands are like shaky, or whatever. It was kind of one of those things where people knew.
Yeah.
Like nobody commented on it. And I guess I figured if it didn't affect his work performance, like whatever.
Yeah.
But it was like having a relationship with somebody who was obviously had all these vices and crutches to heal whatever was going on with him. And like, again, he told me all the time, he's like, love you to death, love you to pieces or whatever. And he's like, but then at the same time, he'd be like, you're too much. Like, you don't want to be with me. You're too much. I can't handle you. Yeah. How am I too much? I'm not even asking anything of you.
Right. When in his story, it might be like, I'm not worthy of someone like you.
You say that all the time too. Yeah. That's where it's like, that made me want to say, you are.
Right.
Let me be here for you.
Yeah. And he couldn't even receive that. So it's just this like,
That's the thing too. This hits me all the time. People are only capable of receiving the love that they feel like they deserve.
yeah.
So it doesn't matter if I'm giving all the love in the world. If somebody doesn't feel like they're worthy of it, which the last guy dated, I'm sure that's a part of it too.
Yeah.
He feel like he's kind of damaged goods or whatever.
Yeah.
And it was like, but if you're not in the space to receive my love, it doesn't matter what I'm doing. It's
Right.
It's never going to be a good fit if you can't receive it.
Yep. Absolutely. And that's where you can see like, okay, that was maybe his own block, is that he didn't feel worthy of receiving the love I was ready to give. Like, I saw you in all your faults and I can love you through that.
And that's my default stance, I think, on everything is, I'm a nurturer. I'm a Cancer the crab. So like, I'm a nurturer and I want to help people and I want to support people and I want to be there for you. And you've got some red flags, but so do I. But, it's one of those, like, unless you're being abusive to me,
Right.
I want to help you through those.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes maybe you drink too much, but I'll still be here for you. And it's like, okay, wow, that's not even good enough. Wow, what's wrong with me? But it's like flipping the script to say it's not what's wrong with me. It's that I'm not a good fit for this particular person for where they are right now. And that's okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that affects my identity as a person and it doesn't affect my worth.
Right. And maybe God and the universe are like, girl, because you're worthy of so much more.
Right.
Someone that can meet your emotional needs and who will receive your love and give the same love in return. And so like, this isn't it.
Yeah.
Like, but again, your ego would say like, well, there must be something wrong with me. It's like, no, he wasn't good enough for you.
Yeah.
Like,
Did you ever see that Steve Harvey little clip? And it was a meme for a while. Every time it goes around, every once in a while, I'm like, this could be like 15 years old by now. But he said something like, things end because God heard conversations that you didn't hear, he saw things you didn't see, and he knows things you don't know.
Yeah.
And every time that comes up, I'm like,
Oh, it just gave me goosebumps.
I got to remember that there are things going on into play
Oh, for real.
that either circumstantially or indirectly don't involve me.
Yeah.
And just because something ends doesn't mean it's a direct reflection of what I did, said, felt, acted.
Right.
Because there are things going on around it that affect the situation too, that I just maybe don't know about, and things are just meant to be.
Yeah. And I always kind of see it as like everything that is meant for you is just like orbiting around you. And when you're ready for it, then you'll receive it. But everything that's meant for you is always within reach. It's just, are we on that same timeline to be able to receive it? Like, I think about, even stuff with this podcast of like sponsors and all this stuff. Well, it's like, I can go out there and put myself out there, but if I don't feel worthy of receiving it yet,
Right.
just like, I can't give you this like amazing, awesome gift yet because you aren't at the level of,
You're not ready to receive it.
you're not fully ready to receive it yet. And it's out there, it's orbiting for you. And when you get there, girl, it's yours. So I think about that. Like, okay,
We're meant to be the gifts for other people.
yeah,
And I think that, even when we were breaking up with this last guy, when we were ending the relationship, he literally said, like, you're going to end up being, like, I'm going to end up saying to the next people I date, like, Laura was this and this, and Laura did this and this, and Laura was so da-da-da. He's like, he literally said to me, he goes, you are the nicest person I have ever met. Because you are so wonderful. And I'm like, my God, why is God in the hell I'm good enough? But it's like, I'm not good enough for him. Or
he wasn't ready for you.
He's not ready to receive all the wonderful things I have to get. He's acknowledging to me. He's trying to give me the gift.
Right. Straight up saying, like, I wasn't ready for the love that you had to give. It was not that you weren't good enough.
And it's not a reflection of me. It doesn't have to be a reflection of me.
So you like can totally detach from that narrative.
Up saying, you suck.
Right.
He literally said, you're the nicest person I've ever met.
But isn't that interesting how your ego still swooped in and said, it's still about you. You're still not good enough. When it's like, oh, he straight up said that wasn't what it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, what the hell, ego? Like, knock it off.
I still take it personally.
Yeah.
Because I'm too fragile.
Oh, girl. I don't even think that is a thing. Like you allow yourself to feel
real fragile inside though, you know?
we all let ourselves truly like put the guards down and the walls down.
And I feel like some days it's like tiny little things can happen and I'm like,
Yeah.
it is what it is, whatever. And then some days, too many things happen all at once or just something damaging enough happens and I'm like a fucking puddle on the floor.
Yeah.
Well, I'm like, what's wrong with me? I'm sitting here like bawling like a 12-year-old.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I literally said that to Erica last week.
12-year-old probably was bawling because the 12-year-old was really hurt.
There you go. We'll revisit that. That was
Yeah.
what Erica and I were talking about last week, was that normally my daily self-care and the daily things I do to make sure I'm feeling my feels and checking in on myself.
Yeah.
But last week got real heavy with a lot of stuff. And it like those things weren't cutting it. And I needed to ramp it up a big time of like really tending to myself and really having some sort of outlet, because it got way too heavy for me
I want
alone.
to stand up paddleboarding with you.
Yeah.
I don't know if we have time left in this season.
I will go until it freezes. That's no joke. I've been out there when it's 43 degrees with
I did yoga. I actually went paddleboarding one time.
Yeah.
That was a fucking challenge.
Yeah, it is not easy. Yeah, I've done a headstand on it once. Ugh, I know I was pretty proud of myself, but now I'm afraid to do it when I'm out on the lake because I have a record where I've never fallen in. I'm like, I can't break that. But
Yes, you can.
I know. I also don't want to fall in that lake.
So I literally want to be there for you and be your support network, and I'll be your cheerleader. I'm a very good cheerleader. Because now I have boobs.
Oh, yes, we should absolutely do that.
We should. I'd love
Yeah,
to.
I actually, that was one of the things I was working on when I was rebranding, was I want to do coaching sessions and healing sessions outside, like going for hikes on the paddleboard, because
forest bathing and nature and fresh air.
That's where I've done so much healing. Like literally that is where I've done my healing, is on my paddleboard out in the woods, where I can, because there's so much just being in nature that is healing. And so,
So many women are afraid of being alone.
Yeah.
And I'm not afraid of being alone.
I'm
afraid of going alone on a dark street out in the middle of the city.
Right.
But like, I love being alone. I'm very, very scarily very good at it.
Yeah. I've gotten good at it. But there was a period where I felt like I would be like, you're such a loser. You want to meet friends and all these other people. And I didn't know what to do with myself, because I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I liked. I had no idea. I just felt so lost.
Well, it's also hard for women our age to be like, who are you outside of being a wife?
Yeah.
Who are you outside of being a mother?
Yeah.
Who are you outside of being an employee?
Yep.
You know, I've got these things of, those were kind of your identities at one point.
Yeah.
But here's me going, who am I outside of, being a sister and a daughter and a whatever? And it's like, well, if I'm not good enough at even those things, then what good really am I?
Right.
God, our mind plays such vicious, our minds and our hearts play such nasty games with us to like help us identify.
Well, and that's right too, of like not being good enough for those things. When I see it as like, no, like that is protection. Like God in the universe be like, no, those people, that energy were not going to help you with your purpose. And I had to put a hard stop on giving them access to your energy. And so did you lose them or did they lose you? Yes. And really thinking about that, like that it was never a healthy relationship to where it felt toxic every time, and it would lower your vibrations every single time, even maybe getting a text or a phone call where you literally felt, I'm up here and immediately down here, like, no way. And God's like, that sinking feeling. Yeah, like I can't have you in and out of frequency here. Like I need you up here because you have a big purpose. And so I can't let people with lower vibrations have access to you. Sorry. But it feels so painful, and it feels like rejection when really it was maybe God's protection of lower vibrational energies that were never going to help you evolve to where you needed to be to do your work.
And that's the hard thing too, is to understand the difference between something ripping your heart out and something giving you a gift. And sometimes it does both at the same time.
Absolutely.
And you just need to work through that to see where it's a gift.
Yep.
And that's really been my kind of internal challenge to myself my whole life, was anything bad that's ever happened to me, I try to look for the positives out of it. And it is not going to happen that same day.
Yep.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
But it involves a lot of not being afraid to dive deep and say, okay, you know what? I lost a job.
Yeah.
I got fired from a baking job that I was at for 4 years because I didn't hit sales goal 3 months in a row while our bank was the whole entire road was under construction. People couldn't get to the bank.
That's fair.
And I sat there and I was like, oh my God, like I'm a single mom and like this was my whole entire livelihood.
Yeah.
And I already didn't like the job as it was, but I was too afraid to leave because it was stable.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And
Been
it's
there.
kind of one of those things where it's like on the drive home, I was so proud of myself. Out of the drive home, I was like, you know what? Now I don't have to do this as this anymore. Oh my God, I'll never have to do this as this. By the time I come home, I was smiling.
Yeah.
And I look back on that
Ooh.
now whenever I'm going through shitty things and I'm like, oh, find 3 positives that happened. And I try to do that every day. Every day that I'm sitting in my little sunk with a black cloud over me, bawling my eyes out, I'm like, okay, but what are the positives?
Yeah. Well, and I love that because you're not just finding the positive, because there can be like toxic positivity too, where you're just immediately going there.
Yes.
But you're saying like, I was crying my eyes out. I was feeling the loss. I was
All the
grieving
feels.
that. I was feeling that. And then I was able to find the positives in it. But if sometimes we skip the feeling part of like, wow, that really sucked or that hurt, that's again,
You can't do that.
you can't do that.
You can't do
No,
that.
you
But
can't
have to-
bypass those things.
You have to say, okay, so it was a bank inside of a grocery store and it was inside of the frozen section. So, oh my God, I think it like chronic sinus infection. Yeah. Chronic sinus infection for like 4 years, I swear. I was there for 4 years.
It's like your body screaming at you, hey, this is not the right fit. And so eventually the universe is like, okay, she's not getting it. She's not listening.
So we're going to help you leave.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that, I love, it's one of my favorite quotes is the universe like, I had to make you so uncomfortable, otherwise you never would have left.
Yeah. Yeah.
I gave you all the physical symptoms. I gave you the stress and the anxiety. That didn't work. So we had to send in the troops to fire you.
When we're at the grocery store, how would you like it if people from the bank were like, hey, would you like to open up a checking account? Where are you walking your bank? Yeah, bring it, man. No, frozen section. I can open up an account. I was living what we were required to do.
Goodness.
And by the time, when I was driving home, like, we called it in-aisling. I'm like, I'm never going to have to fucking in-aisle ever again. Oh my God, that makes me so happy.
Yes.
God, I hated doing that.
Yeah.
Hated doing that. We all hated doing it, but the bank didn't do any advertising. They didn't do any promotions. Literally all on us. I was like, dude, we can only pimp our friends so much stuff. Right? The people that are coming in to buy freaking milk
Yeah.
don't want to come over and open up an account.
That's not why they're here. No.
People hate their bank. They'll leave their bank.
Right.
So it was
That
one
was
of
a
those
gift.
things-
Yep.
It was also validated because when I left that job, bless his heart, my personal banker at the time was this Indian man named Ashok, and I loved Ashok to death. And he was with me all 4 years. He was such an amazing guy, but like the biggest heart ever. And I said, you know what? You tell everybody that asks where I am the next day, you tell them that I got fired. I want you to tell them that I got fired. I literally heard from him so many people that left. They were like, we're only begging here because of Laura. We're leaving. I think 20 or 30 people left and closed their accounts and they found out that I got fired.
Wow.
So like, screw that. We can bank anywhere. We bank with Laura because she takes care of us.
Yeah.
And that was so validating to me that I was like,
goosebumps.
most people would be like, don't tell people I got fired. I don't want to put that out there that I got fired, whatever. I'm like, you tell everybody that I got fired because I'm pissed. And it turned around and it worked around to validate me because I put myself out there.
Yeah.
And I got validation back that people and shook with my
Well, the
people-
reason that happened is because you had validated yourself. You didn't do that to seek validation. You already knew I was freaking good at my
I
job.
just wanted people to know why I left and
Right.
not hear some story from somebody else. And
Right.
obviously I couldn't stand at the front door and be like, hey, if you're looking for me, I no longer work here. I can't do that. So next best thing.
Yeah.
Oh, shut. You tell everybody on the down low why I left.
But the reason you were able to receive that validation is because you knew, like, this was not a me thing. Like, I was actually good at my job, but you already validated yourself. And that's a very good lesson is sometimes when you seek outside validation, but you don't validate yourself,
Yeah.
you're never going to get it. And you're going to search for it your whole freaking life. And oh my gosh, I did that. So is this good enough? Is this, I would ask people for their feedback. I'd write something and have a million people proofread it and all these things. And like, do you think it's good enough, Tammy? Like, do you
have a hard time trusting yourself?
Well, yeah, that's a whole other podcast. I mean, it goes all the way back to intuition as a kid.
Yeah.
When we felt something that wasn't validated, no one ever talked about it, but you felt it, you slowly start to like, well, that
You
doesn't
learn
add
to
up.
lose that feeling.
Yeah, you start to disconnect and start to not trust
And
it.
then you look for external validation that you might not get.
Yeah.
Or it's coming from sources that you shouldn't trust anyway.
Right.
Like bad relationships and alcohol or whatever people get their
validation
validation from.
We were talking about chaos earlier and how we kind of thrive in chaos when it's like, that's actually not a normal thing necessarily, but like you didn't have that foundation. So that's what you're used to. And so,
When everything is smooth and I feel like I get everything done, I'm like, what the fuck did I miss?
because they're just like
wrong here. Because I'm
not
actually
feeling
chaos right now. And I function so much better when I've got multiple plates that I'm juggling.
Yeah.
What am I missing? Now I'm screwing something else up and I'm internalizing and creating the chaos for myself just so I can feel more comfortable.
Well, and that again goes
wrong with
going back in life. It's true, girls. Again, we think back to childhood stuff when the way that you received validation and were seen is like, if I'm always doing something, like that gets praise.
Accomplishment.
So it's hard for us to just be.
Right. And
And
also probably feel like we need to earn rest.
oh God, that was absolutely me. Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah. And now I actually see it as such an important part of my healing journey that I have to do that
I
stuff.
nap in the middle of the day. I don't fucking care.
Yeah, I take a post-workout nap. Girl, I was out hardcore today. I had a dream. Like it was wild. But yeah, but before I was like, yeah, and I would sludge through whatever I was trying to, like, now I'm like, you're not, no, stop.
I used to work through all of my migraines.
Oh,
because I'm super migraine prone for listeners who don't know. But like, when I worked a 9 to 5 and I'd have a migraine in the middle of the day and it was like, I had to work through it. I had a job to do. Yeah. I was telling you I was a conference director and it was like, the work had to get done. Nobody else was going to do it. Yeah. So it's like, you just slog through it. And then I have the migraine for multiple days on end. And now I'm like, I tell everybody that I'm working with now, I'm like, shut down, I've got a migraine. See you when I'm out of it. Bye.
Well, and that's
not functioning my best right now. So I'm just not going to work because I don't want to screw things up.
Right.
And it's like, I feel okay doing that now, but I didn't back then.
Yeah. But even then, when we think about how is our body trying to like wave the flag, like, hello, you are running yourself. You have, again, abandoned your inner child. You're not taking care of yourself because you're overextending yourself at work. Yep. So the only way I can shut you down is to give you a migraine. But like, you would freaking work through it. And everyone's like, I don't even know how to help this woman because migraine won't even stop her. But I think of that now, like when I have an injury, I'm like, same thing. What is this trying to tell me? How is this trying to slow me down? What am I missing? Or, and there's always something. And even like thinking about like our energy centers and stuff, when people have migraine, like, what about like, am I not connected to source? Like, is there something blocked here that I'm not connected enough to source, to like that bigger purpose, that vision of my purpose, all that.
And I used to feel shame about the migraines and guilt that what's wrong with me, that I can't control them or whatever. Yeah. And like, I'm on 3 different migraine medications right now. So I have, one is a monthly prevention injection that I take. One of them is when I get an episode, I take a pill. And then since I've had my bariatric surgery, you probably know you're not supposed to take NSAIDs anymore. Yeah. And I used to have to take a leave with them. Yeah. And unless I took a leave with them, it's like, I could take all the medicine I want. Rezetriptan, that's what it is. I could take all the rezetriptan I wanted, but unless I layered it with an Aleve and then also took a hot shower, half a small Coke, because I'm not even a soda drinker, but I would drink like half a Coke because I just need the caffeine or whatever. I could do an ice pack. I have the ice cap over my head, lay down, try to take a nap, whatever. Yeah. And it was like, and then people hear that I have a migraine, they're like, have you tried a leave? Wow. Okay. So you learn. Yeah. Unless you're in my shoes and you've been in my position and you go through what I go through. Yeah. I'm not going to take you as a valid source of input of shame. I'm not going to feel guilty and shame because you don't know what you're talking about. So why would I internalize that when you don't even know what you're talking about?
Well, and that's one of those situations. And actually, Erin and I talked about this too, is we don't need advice or input. Like, I just need you to sit in this with me. Yeah. And be like, wow, a migraine sucks. Like, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm sorry you're going through that. But yeah, and that gets hard when people just want to rush in, because a lot of us are fixers. Like, that's how we met our own needs, or that's how, but it's like, I know I don't need you to fix me right now. I just need you to be in this moment with me. And if more people understood that, like, wow,
this proverbially stand next to me and hold my hand or give me a hug.
Yeah.
God, I never got enough hugs as a kid. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, the guy I dated for 4 years, he was not a hugger at all. He'd give me a hug and I would say, can I have a hug? I'd literally have to ask for one. I'd have to ask permission. Yeah. And he would do the thing where he'd barely hug me and then he'd tap me a couple times on the shoulder.
That's his own blocks, right?
And I was like, by the way, do you know if our hug isn't 12 seconds, it doesn't actually even count. It doesn't do any therapeutic good unless it's at least 12 seconds. And it involves multiple people actually putting pressure on each other.
Right. So you were a teacher for him in that moment because it obviously didn't get the affection that he needed.
Still.
Well, just to even open him up to like, I mean, you hope. That's the thing is,
I'm pretty sure as soon as I went to go hug him, he'd roll his eyes every time.
You can deliver the lesson or the test for other people and they may not get it.
If they're not in the place to receive it, it doesn't matter what you offer. Yeah. And it's fine.
Yep.
And we have to be okay with it being fine.
Right. And that's where you bless and release and don't attach a story to it that you weren't good enough.
Bless and release. I like that.
I say that a lot. And that's really, And that's just, it's so freeing. Like, okay, that wasn't about me. Like, I can bless and release that person. Or they gave me a gift in that painful package. I can bless and release them.
Painful package.
Yeah. We get them delivered all the time, but
I got the little fluttering when you said that because that's so, it's so true. And if you just kind of like whenever things get really overwhelming too, I try to picture a little butterfly and then watch the butterfly fly away. Like sometimes you just have to let it do that. We have to visualize something and just literally let it go and release it. If it's not going to do any good, why are you internalizing it?
Yeah.
Just let it go. But I mean, it's easier said than done.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, if you visualize something, sometimes that's easier. Like people say journaling is really, I'm not a good journaler, but people say if you sit there and write it all out, like it's cathartic and it helps you feel better and helps you process.
Yeah. Well, even last Thursday when I was feeling heavy there was a loss in my family and, I was trying to get all this work done, but I just got really emotional all of a sudden. And I literally felt like, okay, I have to stop. I have to put this down because I literally saw my inner child next to me just like kind of say like, Mom, I need to cry. Like, Mom, if my kids did that, I would put down what I was doing.
Absolutely.
I would attend to them. So I'm like, I have to do the same thing for her.
Yeah.
And
we
so
have to nurture ourselves and not just the people around us.
Yes, because if we don't, and we're always nurturing other people, not ourselves, that is the worst form of abandonment. And that is often the lesson for a lot of us is like, how are you abandoning yourself?
Yeah.
Because that's what hurts your inner child the most.
And compounds the scar tissue and does it even more.
Yes. Because that's what she wants. She doesn't need it from anyone else. And so that's where you can bless and release. People are like, I didn't need the love from them. I need it from you. Yeah. And if you can meet those needs, she's good. Yeah. But we have to tend to her every single day. She's with you every single day. That's why I have pictures everywhere of her in my apartment, because I just want that little bit of eye contact, that little bit of like energy exchange. And like, she's good.
And like you kind of touched on it earlier, you can be fine and whole one day.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow, I don't know what my problem was yesterday. I feel great today. I got this solved.
Yeah.
I feel whole. I'm happy. You're going to bed with a smile on your face. And the next day something happens and you're like, oh my God. And you have to be able to do the work all over again and start from scratch and be like, all right, let's tackle this again today. Just because I was full yesterday doesn't mean I'm going to be whole the next day or the day after. It's like bread. You have to keep remaking it every day.
It's a roller coaster ride for sure. But yeah, but like tending to her like that, you don't get a day off.
No.
Just like if I'm with my kids, like I still got to feed them. Like, you don't get a day off in that regard. And so I think about that, like, okay, I have to tend to her every day. And when I don't,
are you ever not a mother?
No. Right. Well, and that's like, eventually, if I ignore her, she'll throw a tantrum. She will throw a tantrum and I will get upset about something ridiculous, like there not being vegetables or something, something just stupid. Like, oh, that's why. Like it was a tantrum about me not meeting her needs. It just came out that there was no vegetables. And so I feel ridiculous. I literally feel like a little kid throwing a tantrum.
Why do I feel going having a steak dinner with vegetables right now?
I think we should wrap this up and go over steak.
The most expensive one on the menu. Just because, and you can probably split it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'll eat the whole thing.
I don't know that I've got the stomach capacity.
I do. I definitely do. I will eat the leftovers.
I know. It's kind of funny now. The people that the guy that I dated, like, you're such a cheap date. Like, you don't drink and you hardly eat anything. I'm like,
yeah.
And it's right. But it does make me feel kind of cool. At least when I go out to eat, I'm like, yeah, I can eat off the kids' menu and be totally fine.
Yeah. There's something really powerful on when, like, food doesn't have that kind of control over you anymore.
So much. Yeah, so much. And I think it was especially really hard for me before I decided to have the surgery for like the whole year before that. Because I had back surgery in 2020. And that's when I started gaining the weight. It was like 2019-ish because I started not being able to do nearly as much stuff as I used to. I used to being extremely active. And then I had the back surgery. And obviously the healing of that was horrific.
Yeah.
And then to get it diagnosed as failed in 2022. And it was like, oh my God, like what is wrong with me? And I think my body fights healing. So that's a whole nother aspect too that the inner child.
Yeah.
But it was like by 2023 in April, I was like, I don't even want to eat food.
Yeah.
Like I feel like anytime I eat, it was just like harming my body. And it was like, I know I need to eat, but I don't want to eat. And it was like this horrible mental tension going on. I'm like, this sucks. I feel like I'm doing everything I need to do, but it's still not right. Now I just don't even want to eat anything.
Right. Well, that's
worse for you too, because your body will try to hold on to everything that you finally do eat when you do restrict. And it was like, I thought I was doing the work.
Yeah.
But it was like, but there are inner things going on with my body that I didn't know about.
Right.
That metabolic reset just kind of really helped. And I think a lot of people were like, you weren't heavy enough. And I was like, are you reverse fat shaming?
Oh, that happens.
Like, this is my body. I paid for it. Fuck off. Like, my body and my weight are none of your concern. Did I come to anybody and say, hey, do you think I should get bariatric surgery?
Right.
So it's like, if I mention it to you, it's because I want to either educate you or let you in on what's going on with my decision making, to feel supported.
Yeah.
I don't need to have you tell me like my body's fine just the way it is. Like,
Didn't ask for your projections. Thank you.
oh,
Right.
No, it's fine if you don't want to get it. It's not for you or whatever, but it's a me decision because it's my body.
Right. And when you start to be able to see people's projections, that's why I had a whole episode on check yourself before you project yourself, because we do it all the time to people. And yeah. And so when I see it and I'm like, okay, like because before I would take their comments and I would internalize them and I would create the story around them. And now I'm like, wow, that was a projection. Like, okay, that was a you thing. Like, I ain't attaching a story to that. And like, and again, so I don't carry around that kind of weight anymore.
And why would you take advice for someone that you wouldn't take criticism from?
Yeah.
Why would you take criticism from somebody you wouldn't take advice from?
Right.
It's like, you have no idea what we're talking about. If you've never gone through bariatric surgery and you're not educated in it like you are, you have no idea what you're talking about.
Right.
So just shut up. It's like Facebook. When you see people on Facebook, they're like, hey, what happened? I just saw somebody on like the neighborhood group or whatever, and they're like, what happened to my lawn? And her lawn looks like it's kind of torn up. And people were throwing around just random things up. Looks like chipmunks. Looks like you got bulbs.
Just opened yourself up.
People were just throwing out. And I'm like, why don't you bother commenting if you're not a lawn expert and you don't actually know what it is?
Right. Because
People love on there. And the last person was like, I'm a lawn care expert. It's this, and that. So you have grubs in your lawn or whatever. And I was like,
isn't that funny?
the other people are probably like, oh,
It's a lot of fixers that were trying to swoop in and get their own needs met. But yeah,
love that you want to contribute, but if you don't know what you're talking about, you're supposed to fuck up. But they think they do because he goes like, I know, I'm the smartest person in the world. I'm going to take a random guess and like have you go down a rabbit hole. A real rabbit hole. Thinking about what it was grubs though.
it was grubs.
It was grubs.
We settled that. It was
grubs.
grubs. But we
Awesome.
covered a lot of things, and I feel like you need to come back on because I feel like there's so much more we can talk about.
Absolutely.
And thank you
I'd
for
love
just
to.
being open and vulnerable with all of it, because that's what we need to hear that, and allow yourself to be emotional because it gives people
And
permission
authentic.
that are listening.
I'm spending the rest of 2024
Yes.
surrounding myself with my girlfriends and some guy friends that are just authentic and real and keep it real and validate who I am as a person, and I can validate them as a person.
Yes.
That's going to be my goal for
Love
the rest of
it.
2024.
Amen. Well, add me to the list because I'm all about it. So awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We will see you guys next week. If you resonated with anything that we talked about in this episode, please comment, like it, share it is even awesome as well. So other people can hear it.
Encourage comments. Like, join in on the conversation. This is not something that people should keep to themselves. These feelings that we all feel are so valid and so need to get discussed. And so this is a place for you to feel safe and discuss.
Amen. Thank you. Well, on that note,
Thank you.
we'll see you next week.
Bye.